digital world for the first time in a very, very, very long time. I am about to talk to you about a new movie that is available to go see in the movie theaters. And not just any movie, but a big blockbustery movie. A movie that has highly anticipation for most of the year, especially by me. Movie that has had a lot of money and a lot of effort poured into it. A movie that has a good reputation for being made by a great director and having great actors involved. But most importantly, a step in the right direction, hopefully, for regaining some sort of normalicity in the theatre world and releasing movies. Because if you look back on my old reviews, I used to review a movie every now and then, and things were kicking off at the start of the year before things happened. My last review was for the movie Onward back in March. It is now 5 months later. A 5-month gap between going to the movie theaters. And let me tell you, it was a very strange experience. I got a couple of friends together and we went to go see this movie. And right up until I walked in, I still, for one, couldn't believe it. I kept thinking someone was going to pull the rug out from under my feet. There would be a reason that the movie would be delayed again. The movie would be cancelled. I'd have to bunker down for another 6 months of lockdown. Who knows what would happen? But even walking into a movie theater, looking around, smelling the smells of a theater, seeing the popcorn being made, walking into a dark room, finding your seat, sitting down, watching the trailers appear in front of you. Then when the lights start to go down, when the movie's about to kick up. I got to tell you, it was a very exciting feeling. I was home, essentially. It felt good to be back at it. And it seems positive going forward that maybe we'll get more and more of this as we go forward. Movies are taking chances. They're finding ways to release these movies. They are accepting that they might have to release them without the usual packed cinemas that they had always expected. But I have a couple of tickets booked for another movie in a couple of weeks. So if we slowly pick this up, maybe, just maybe, we'll be able to talk about a few more movies. But the point of the matter is, Spliced In Later went to see a movie, and Spliced In Later enjoyed it, and Spliced In Later is going to talk about it somehow. This is a very difficult movie to talk about, and overall give you, the listeners, the overall opinion of whether or not you should see this movie. What movie am I talking about? Well, as the stars aligned last week, I talked about the director Christopher Nolan and how much I like his movies, hoping that the next week his movie would come out. Success! His new movie, Tenet, has officially hit select theatres around the world, mainly here in Australia, but also select countries in Europe as well. I believe America is getting it next week. But it is staggering out across the place. So you should have it eventually, wherever you are in the world. So if it is out now, it should be out this week. So have a listen now, see what you think. But I would highly encourage, even if you're not sure, go to the movie theaters if you can and you feel safe. Got to get those bums in the seats to encourage the people out there to release movies. Yes, the movie is Tenet. Now, normally I would give you a description of the plot of a movie. I give a very brief introduction to it. Then I would say what I liked in the movie, what I didn't like in the movie, what I thought were good story points, what I thought were bad story points. For Tenet, it's a hard approach, and I'm going to walk a very fine line, but I am saying right off the bat that I'm not going to talk about any plot details, not even a brief synopsis or a summary, not even a 2-sentence update of just what happens in this movie. Because what I think is important for Tenet, for this movie, as with a lot of other Christopher Nolan movies, it's very important that you don't know what this movie's about when you go and see it. There are trailers out there that will probably spoil bits of it for you. You might have already seen a trailer, so you might not care that I'm being vague. But for those people that haven't, I know after seeing this movie, I went back and looked at some trailers that they released recently, and they did give away quite a few plot points, which I was very happy just to discover in the organic sense watching the movie. So, how are we going to review this movie if I can't talk about what happened in it? Quite easily, because you can still sway whether you enjoyed a movie or not without discussing every plot point and saying what happened in the movie. Suffice it to say though, if I accidentally mention something which might be considered a teensy spoiler, I do apologize in advance. If you are worried, if you're anxious, I'll say right at the start now that this movie, of course, is going to get a recommendation from me. It's going to get very high praise from me. At the moment, it could be the best film of the year, which isn't saying much considering there have not been any movies this year, but it has top marks from me, 100%. Definitely go and see it. It needs to be seen in the theater. I understand why Christopher Nolan specifically wanted people to see it in the movie theater and not see it over their little devices at home, hunched on their couches. It really benefits from being in the theater experience with all surround sound and the darkness and just being trapped in this world that you are entering when you watch Tenet. So bottom line, Tenet's good. But why specifically? I'll try and go into that now. Let's start with the direction. First of all, Christopher Nolan absolutely nails it. As I said last week, and as I say with a lot of movies that he's done, Christopher Nolan is a huge, huge success when it comes to the slow burn story. His stories always have a very specific point that needs to be get to through the 2.5 hours that you watch. But each movie is a different experience. As I said, Inception was very different from Memento. Interstellar is very different from Dunkirk. If I had to relate Tenet to any of those specific movies, if I had to compare it with another Christopher Nolan movie, just in terms of the themes and feel and adventures type storytelling that you're going to get in Tenet, it's probably closest to Inception. But I won't say why or anything like that. I will say if you enjoyed Inception, there is a lot of what made Inception so good in Tenet. But it's not the same movie. So that's not me saying that Tenet is about dream adventures and going inside a dream within a dream within a dream. Absolutely nothing like that at all. But still, in essence, close to that. Very vague, but hopefully intriguing. Basically, it is a very complicated movie, but it makes sense if you pay attention. I've said this to a few people now. You cannot go to many Christopher Nolan films, but specifically Tenet, and just not be prepared to pay attention. If you're just going with your friends and it doesn't matter what movie you see, and you're one of those people that likes to have a chat in the movie theater or pull out their phone and have a quick check, which is diabolical, never do that. But if you are one of those people, if you're someone who doesn't really want to focus, who likes the cinema experience just to turn their brain off, this is going to leave you very confused and very befuddled. So you cannot hold that against the movie if you do not pay attention to it. However, if you pay attention to it, even if you're not the cleverest tool in the shed, specifically me, you're still going to get it, which is my favorite part about Tenet, I think. There are a lot of themes here. There's a lot of weaving parts to the story that are constantly whipping it around all these different characters and places and adventures. And in the beginning, it kicks off straight away. There's no real introduction and build up. You basically hit the ground running and you do not stop for 2.5 hours as each pivotal story point is sort of hurled at your head and it all goes into your brain as a jumble. You don't know how it all fits together. And it might confuse you. It might turn you away at first. You might go, I really don't know what's going on, so I'm going to give up on this movie. But if you just sit and allow yourself to absorb the film naturally, everything comes to a point where, for me, about halfway through the film, jigsaw pieces started to click together. And in a very satisfying way, because they make it so you can figure it out for yourself without the movie explaining it to you. Some movies are very notorious for having what is affectionately known as the exposition dump, which is a movie has a whole bunch of different themes and ideas and clues and whatever, but at some point in the movie, a character steps up to the screen, essentially looks directly at the audience, past the person he's talking to, and does a speech, a monologue, starts talking for 15 minutes and explains everything that has happened to the audience so they get what's going on and it all clicks for them. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. If it works with the storytelling, if it's natural for the movie, whatever. What's great about Tenet is there's nothing like that in here. Everything happens from point A to point B, but no one stops and says, all right, if anyone's lost, this is what's happening. However, the way the clues are discovered, the way the story unravels. In your own mind, you yourself are getting the exposition, but you're working it out for yourself. About 2/3 into this movie, I figured something out, which, talking with a friend afterwards, they're like, I figured that out long before you. It's not a race. It doesn't matter who figures out the twists and turns in this movie first. But when I figured it out and when I started to figure more stuff out, I felt good about myself for starters. I felt proud of myself for figuring out the concept of the movie. And then it intrigued me even more to see where the rest of the movie was going to go. So case in point, if you go into Tenet and you allow yourself to sit down and you just pay attention to it, you are in for a very interesting, intriguing, action-packed story with many concepts and ideas that may seem bonkers at first, but you will get it if you just allow yourself the moment to pay attention and to experience it organically. For our actors in here, again, I do not want to talk about the characters. Some characters come and go in this film. They only show up for a scene and they depart. Others who you think are only going to show up for a few seconds actually end up doing a lot more in the movie. Basically, what I can pinpoint exactly is our star of this movie is played by John David Washington. He is essentially in nearly every single scene of this 2.5-hour movie. I'm a huge fan of John David Washington. I haven't seen him in anything other than BlacKkKlansman, but I loved BlacKkKlansman and I loved Tenet. So he's 2 for 2 at the moment. So he has a 100% success rate. He is a very charming presence on screen. He is also a lot like the audience. He doesn't know what's going on. He has to learn what's happening. He has to adapt to what's going on. But he's very suave and cool about it. He never says, I'm confused, or this doesn't make sense. He just rolls with the punches of whatever's going on. He is a hero in absolutely every sense of the word. He has a strong moral obligation of what's right and what's wrong. And he is determined to do whatever he can to save people, to protect people, to accomplish his missions, accomplish his goals. And he's all about the human emotion and the human experience. He believes in connections. He believes in accountability, not leaving people behind to die or using people to his advantage. Whether it's friend or foe, he's able to talk his way out of a lot of situations. He's able to make enemies see him in a positive way, and he's able to convince people to follow him when needs be. People he's only met for 2 seconds, he goes, you're with me? And they go, yep, we're with you, absolutely. There's a lot of intrigue about why these relationships are so solid, and you eventually discover that as you go through the movie. A side note, I also want to give a shout out to Robert Pattinson, who is in this movie. I have not seen Robert Pattinson in a lot of stuff. I know he was in Harry Potter, and I enjoyed him in The Goblet of Fire as Cedric Diggory. Didn't check out the Twilight movies, as I've said before in the past. I have not given them a chance. I don't know if they're good or not. Maybe one day I'll watch them, but I don't think I will. And I know there was that brief moment where he was going to be the next teen heartthrob. He was in all those romantic drama films. And then he sort of dropped off the face there. If I don't know where he's been, this is the first I've seen him in something in a long time. But he was very good. He was charming. He was interesting to watch. He had a very good purpose to the film for however briefly he is in it. And every time he was on screen, I enjoyed it. And I wanted to see him again, whether or not he would turn up again later. So well done, Robert Pattinson. Apart from John David Washington, you are the most valuable player to me for this film. And as a side note, because of that, the fact that you are the Batman in next year's film, The Batman, I'm very excited for it now. And I'm very excited for you to be Batman. A side note, we got a teaser trailer for The Batman that comes out next year. I would highly recommend jumping on to have a look at that because it is a very cool trailer and Robert Pattinson looks great in it. So fantastic there. A few other actors here and there. I won't say who they are because, again, I don't want to spoil it. And a lot like 1917, it is fun watching a film and seeing actors pop up that you recognize and learning what their role is in the movie. So because this movie is so vague and this review is so vague, I don't want to say this person is in it, this person's in it, because when you go to the movie, you might be watching out for them. I just had to give that little note to Robert Pattinson because it would be unfair to him if I did not. But this is John David Washington's film, and he kills it. Well done. Couple other points I can make. The locations and shooting of the direction of Christopher Nolan and the way it looks on screen is just beautiful. It is a world traversing film, so you go to a lot of different countries. There are a lot of establishment shots that just look beautiful to behold, that look overwhelming, over emotionally, especially conversations sitting on balconies that are overlooking mountains and rivers. Car chases where cars are flipping looks very real. Notoriously, there is a scene in this movie, which I guess a lot of people know about, but if you don't know, I'm not going to spoil it, where you would think it's CGI, but no, they actually took something and they absolutely destroyed it in real life, as in the purpose of the movie that they did in the movie. So that's always good to know. It's nice to know that directors out there like Christopher Nolan, where they can, are not just going for the cheapness of just going, we've got to make everything CGI. I don't knock films for using CGI. I understand that they are needed where they are needed. I mean, you could not have a film like The Avengers without CGI because it's just not possible for the world that they are showcasing. But in a world like Tenet, which is not set in a magical world or involving aliens from other planets or anything like that, no talking raccoons, and you don't need the CGI, if you can go all in and just make it as real as possible, well done, hats off to you. I also want to mention the music. I was astonished to learn after watching this film that Hans Zimmer, who I said last week works on all of Christopher Nolan's films, does not do the music for Tenet. The music is actually done by Ludwig Göransson. Now, Ludwig Göransson, well done, sir, because the music was spot on for what I've attributed to Christopher Nolan films, which is that dark, bass, edgy music that starts off slow and then constantly builds and builds and builds as the scene's progressing. So either you feel the tension or you feel the excitement of what's coming. But in this case as well, like all the other films, Tenet does not steal its theme from other Christopher Nolan films. It has its own sound. The sound is trippy. It is hard to focus on because of the main plot of this film, the thing that people are focusing on at the moment. The music makes sense for the theme and the concept that it's portraying. Again, this is very vague, and I wish maybe one day I'll do a spoiler talk on Tenet. I'll give it a couple months for it to be out when people have a chance to see it, and then I'll go in and say, right, so Tenet was about this, and that was cool, and these are all the little tidbits which are interesting about why it was cool. But for now, Ludwig's music perfectly matches what's going on in Tenet, and it stuck in my head. It worked perfectly for every scene with the different things that were going on. I wish that I'd known about Ludwig when I had done my music episode a couple weeks ago. He's done quite a lot, actually, that I love movies and TV shows that he's worked on. Black Panther, he did the music for that. He worked on the TV show The Mandalorian, and the Mandalorian main theme is one of the best pieces of music I've heard in a few years. So, well done. I look forward to more of your collaboration with other actors and directors. I look forward to being surprised, because I am a big assumer. I always assume, oh yeah, I know this. This is Hans Zimmer. I'm confident about it, and I don't need to look it up because I'm sure I'm right. And then to go, whoa, hang on, you're dead wrong. Great stuff. It's always nice to be proven not wrong, but to learn that it is a much bigger, wider world out there beside specific things that you always focus on. Hans Zimmer does great music, but there are other people out there that do just as good music that I haven't even looked into because I'm too busy looking at Hans Zimmer work. So, a lesson for me in the future to keep an ear out, because that was a fun piece of information to learn. Finally, how do I wrap this up? People are probably thinking, what? Can you give us any information about Tenet at all? What's the point of it? Well, the point is that it is an original idea. It is not a sequel to something. It is not a remake, a reboot, a sidequel, a established piece in an already expanding cinematic universe. It is Christopher Nolan's idea of a concept involving this particular thing, and he's created a brand new world with brand new characters, brand new adventures, tidbits, everything like that. It is very refreshing to have that in a world that's constantly using the same stuff over and over again. Looking at 2021 for next year, because of all the films that have been pushed back for 2020, I'm not complaining, but there are a high amount of superhero movies, action movies, remakes of classic 80s movies, the 8th or 9th installment in a continuing franchise. So Tenet is something unique, much like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was last year. It is a brand new concept, it is a brand new idea. It doesn't rely on other products. It has no intention of doing any sequels after this. And I think it's a good starting point for going back to the movie theaters to remember what it was that started movies in the first place. Original ideas, original concepts. Right now, Tenet is the only thing showing, really. There are a few other assorted movies out there, but Tenet needs people to go and see it in the movie theaters to convince the releases of movies that it is worth releasing them now. If it doesn't perform too well, odds are we're going to get more movies that are just going to be held on to desperately, refuse to be released until it's guaranteed to make $1 billion at the box office. So if you have not been to the movie theaters in a while, which I assure you haven't, if you're intrigued by Tenet, if you're unsure, if you're just looking for something to do on a Saturday, check out this movie. Go see it. Every little bit helps. I'll give you one clue as to what Tenet is about, and it's simply the title Tenet is not as confusing as it sounds. The concept of the movie is hidden in that title. It's right there in front of you, which I didn't even get, even after watching the movie. When I saw the credits roll and the name Tenet showed up at the end of the credits, it clicked for me that it was there for me to see. I just had to realize it. So there you go, little clue for you. I'm sure most of you know exactly what this movie's about. You've seen the trailers, you've read reviews, you've heard people talking about it or whatever. But I know there must be one or two of you that aren't familiar with this film at all, have no idea what it's about. Do yourself a favor, don't look into it. Just take good old Spliced In Later's advice and check out this film completely unmolested, and you will appreciate it for sure. Tenet gets 9 out of 10 for me. It doesn't get a full 10 out of 10 because I have to rate the overall viewing of the film, and those first couple minutes where the movie took off and hit the ground running and I was very lost in the beginning had me thinking worriedly at the start of the film that perhaps this wasn't going to be as good as I thought it was. That said, it turned out to be a fantastic, amazing film, and I'm sure when I rewatch it knowing what I know now, it's going to kick up that extra bit and go to a full 10 out of 10. But 9 out of 10 is still an A+++. Highly recommend it. Go and see it. Great film. Fantastic. Great to be back in the movie theaters. I'm so happy. I can't wait to hopefully see more. Touch wood. But for now, hooray. Great times. Thank you for listening to me as always. It has been fun reviewing a movie for you. I hope you go and see Tenet. I hope you've enjoyed listening. I will be back next week as per usual for your normal Spliced In Later episodes. But keep your ear to the ground because I will see another movie in a couple weeks. Hopefully. Let's hope the rug isn't pulled out then. This is a very unlikely film that I'm still shocked that I'm actually even going to see even without a pandemic because it's been delayed about 5,000 times. But if I do get to see it, I will be bringing you a review. So as always, keep tuned, check in, new episodes coming, new reviews coming. Should be good. But until then, I love and appreciate you all as always. Thank you for listening to me. You've been Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos. I'll catch you next time.